Good evening. This is the Art Scene. I'm your host, Lila Snow. I'm going to start with a big show at American University. The museum's entire first floor, which is enormous, is going to have a show about the Washington Women's Art Center. The Washington Women's Art Center started in the mid-70s near DuPont Circle on Q Street. And it was just such an exciting time. Artists wanted a place to get together. We got a grant for a lecture series. We had juried shows. We went from 400 members to 800 members when Miriam Shapiro juried a show. And Lucy Blankstein was the director. At the same time, I was associate director. There were 18 interviews of the leaders. There are 100 artists. I'm going to have two pieces from the Permanent collection, anti-war pieces called Ici et Tombe, Rubbings from the Streets of Paris, and a piece called Graduation, which shows my mother in her prize-winning graduation dress. She was competing with garment workers, and some of them lost relatives in the famous Triangle Blouse Company fire. So it should be an interesting show. On to the celebration of Earth Day, which took place on April 22nd. And I heard that you could get a fine of $1,000 in a California restaurant if you give a patron a straw when they haven't asked for it, because the marine life is so endangered. Well, besides the marine life, as President Macron put it when talking about the environment, it was just such a clever turn of a phrase. He said, there's no planet B. So when we ruin this planet, there's no place else for us to go. And the biggest threat to the planet is population. And here we have two TV shows that celebrate families. One has 18 children and one has 19 children. They dropped the Duggar Family, 19 kids and counting, because it turned out that the firstborn, Josh, was sexually abusing 3 of his siblings. One was 5 years old and a babysitter. And so to think that this is cute, look at this family with 19. She was trying for the 20th. Her doctor explained to her, your body can no longer do this, so give up. And the sister wives has 18 children with 4 wives. And here's this great dad who tells his first wife, Mary, who was only able to have 1 child, who's about to leave for college, that if he wants more children, so if she doesn't want to put herself through in vitro fertilization in her 40s, he's going to ask one of the other wives, why does he want more children, one might ask. He never spends any time with the children, he never talks to them. Once in a while, he carries a toddler around as a prop, and take 3 or 4 teenagers on a walk and talk to them. He really likes to schmooze with the wives rather than do that. So the Duggar children are not sent to school. They're homeschooled. Translation, they babysit, they clean, they cook, they do the laundry. Even the 5-year-old is seen dragging a laundry cart around to pick up the dirty laundry outside the room. So it's absolutely outrageous. They're exploited. Everyone asks, how can they afford that many children? They're very secretive about finances, but It looks like the TV programs are funding this. So it's very upsetting that this is considered cute when our planet is, they're using up more than their share of resources of the planet. So on to, I wanted to talk about a book called The Invention of Nature, and it's about Alexander von Humboldt. It's by Andrea Wolf. And this program is about overlooked films and overlooked important people. This book, I mean, Humboldt is somebody I really had not heard much about. And Newton said, "We see further because we stand on the shoulders of giants." He was talking about Galileo. So here's Humboldt, who very few people have heard of. And I think Darwin would have had trouble coming up with evolution if he hadn't talked to him. And in an age, this is the early 19th century. It's a time when getting around, communicating with other scholars was almost impossible. And even so, he exchanged ideas with Goethe, with Darwin, with Jefferson, with Thoreau, with Samuel Morse, the inventor of the Morse code. So I just think it's important that he now has a wonderful book. And then getting to overlooked films, Sally Hawkins was praised for The Shape of Water, and she should have been praised. But very few people have heard of Maudie, which is a very modest film. She plays a Nova Scotia artist who lives very modestly. She's handicapped, and I recommend seeing Maudie. I also wanted to say about downsizing with Matt Damon. How could you go from Good Will Hunting? That's what you call downsizing, because that film is just not worthy of anything. I also wanted to mention, when I talked about the Ellsberg papers last time, I forgot to say that I was in Moscow. I had tickets to the ballet at Gorky Park, and there were anti-American demonstrations because we had just done the unprovoked attack. This was August 1964, and my guide said, "Do you know what your country did?" And I said, "I'll believe it when I read it in the New York Times." And in 1971, it was the New York Times. I also want to say that I forgot that it went to the Supreme Court, and it was Ellsberg who gave the information to 9 other newspapers, so putting everyone in jail was not going to be so easy. Another modest, overlooked film, Lucky. Here's a nonagenarian who starts his day, he does some stretches, he looks in his refrigerator. There are 3 bottles of Ensure. He drinks one, and he walks every place. He's in a small town. I don't know if he's showing, this is how to live till 90, but he goes and he has coffee with lots of cream and sugar, and then he has a double Bloody Mary, and that's his nourishment for the day. And then he goes to a bodega to buy he smokes, buy his cigarettes and his Ensure, and the owner invites him to her son's 10th birthday party. And so he goes. He doesn't really know anyone. It was very touching that she invited him. And all of a sudden, he starts singing a song in Spanish. Por volver, se querer. It's such a touching moment on such a modest level. I really was impressed with that. And then I don't think we should forget Well, let me get in a short story in the New Yorker, The Cat Person, by Rio Fenian. It's a long, complicated name, so I'll put it up on the screen. I don't usually do a short story, but I read that and I was stunned. And I didn't know if anyone else was stunned, but evidently this story went viral and it resulted in her being given a 7-figure book contract. So watch for her because she's really something. And then there's a film that hasn't gotten much press. It's based on a true story. It's called Lion, and even though Nicole Kidman is in it, very few people have heard about it. It's about a 5-year-old Indian boy. His brother is supposed to watch him, but somehow he gets on a train and falls asleep, and in India he ends up going an enormous distance and ends up in a part of India where they don't speak Hindi, his only language. So he ends up in an orphanage with horrible conditions. It shows you what that's like. And an Australian couple adopts him, and it's just a wonderful match. They love him, and he's wonderful, and it's such a good experience. They adopt a second Indian boy, and that's not as good, so it shows you how you can't go by something like that. I've read Alexander McCall Smith's books. He has a lot of books about African women, and I thought, what made him ever think that that was something he knew anything about? Because in fact, he's patronizing and he's judgmental. And so I heard, oh, but when he writes about Scotland, he's marvelous. So I read 44 Scoutland Street, and he's just as patronizing and just as judgmental. I was interested because it's about a gallery, but the people who run it don't know anything. So I'll see you next time on The Art Scene. This is Lila Snow.